Hi there, I'm Sarah and I'll be providing an overview of Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease, or PD, is a neurodegenerative disease, meaning that symptoms worsen as time progresses. PD is known to be the second most commonly diagnosed neurodegenerative disease. Approximately 1 in every 500 Canadians are diagnosed with PD every year. PD causes neuronal death of dopaminergic, meaning dopamine producing neurons, that are located in the substantia nigra, which is located in the basal ganglia. As a result, the brain cannot produce sufficient dopamine. This causes major issues with motor movement in those with PD, as motor movement is dependent on dopamine. You can see in these images here where those brain regions are located. The onset of symptoms in those with typical PD occurs after the age of 50. However, symptoms can appear in some individuals younger than 50, and this is known as young onset Parkinson's disease, or YOPD. The symptoms and stages of PD. Patients will begin to experience symptoms as a result of the gradual degeneration associated with this disease. However, it is very important to note that symptoms are extremely variable. Not every patient experiences the same symptoms or to the same degree. With that being said, though, the most common symptoms associated with this disease are tremor, bradykinesia, and changes in gait, balance, and posture. It is also very important to pay attention to the cognitive symptoms that these patients often experience. These symptoms can include mood disorders, loss of memory, loss of smell, and confusion. The symptoms and stages of this disease follow a very broad pattern depending on the individual. However, in nearly all cases, changes tend to occur relatively slowly, and it can take years for symptoms to become truly debilitating from initial onset. PD typically follows a pattern of mild to moderate to more severe symptoms as time progresses. In the initial stages, symptoms are often quite mild and may be confined to one side of the body. However, as neurodegeneration continues over time, symptoms tend to worsen, new symptoms generally appear, and the individual becomes more debilitated, losing their independence. The diagnosis process. Today, there is no specific test available to diagnose PD. This process is somewhat unclear and complex and typically differs from patient to patient. Often, it takes a long time for a patient to be diagnosed with this disease. If patients display 2 out of the 3 main symptoms, including tremor, slow movement, and rigidity, this is a cause for concern. If this is the case, the patient will be referred to a neurologist that is trained in such movement disorders. Here, the neurologist will conduct blood tests and brain scans to rule out other conditions. Neurologists will also take the patient's history into account as well as their symptoms. Once other conditions are ruled out, the patient will likely be prescribed L-DOPA medication. If symptoms begin to improve upon taking this medication, the patient will most likely be diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So the prognosis of PD. PD itself is not a fatal disease, and those with PD typically have an average life expectancy. However, the complications associated with the progression of this disease can lead to death. Some of these complications include pneumonia, falling-related injuries, or choking. Experts suggest that it can take approximately 10 to 20 years for PD to fully develop from the initial onset of symptoms. With that being said, though, it is very difficult to determine a prognosis for this disease because, again, symptoms and presentation of PD is extremely diverse and variable among patients. The causes, risk factors, and preventative measures associated with PD. In the vast majority of cases, the cause of PD is unknown. However, there is some speculation that genetics can play a role, particularly in the cellular breakdown component of this disease. There are a number of additional risk factors associated with PD. These include advancing age, heredity, sex. Males are slightly more susceptible to PD than females. Ongoing exposure to environmental toxins or pesticides, the use of dopamine-reducing drugs such as those prescribed to treat schizophrenia, a history of traumatic brain injury, as well as a history of melanoma may also increase the risk of developing PD. Finally, an interesting one that I came across was the consumption of dairy products. Research has suggested that some lifestyle habits may work as preventative measures for developing PD, such as smoking tobacco, consuming caffeine, and using common medications such as ibuprofen. However, there is a lot more research required in this field before these habits can truly be recommended as preventative measures. As of today, the only preventative measure that is both reliable and justifiable enough to suggest to the public is regular physical activity. Treatments and therapies for this disease. Unfortunately, there is no cure for Parkinson's disease, but there are some treatments and therapies available to these patients that work to help control and manage the symptoms that they experience. Typically, these treatments help with issues related to walking, movement, and/or tremor. There are a number of pharmacological treatments available that work to increase or substitute the amount of dopamine in the brain. By far, the most commonly prescribed treatment for PD is carbidopa-levodopa, or L-DOPA medication. This is taken as an oral tablet. L-DOPA works by converting to dopamine once it has passed the blood-brain barrier and entered the brain. L-DOPA is extremely effective in treating motor symptoms in the initial stages of this disease. However, as time progresses and patients build a tolerance, the medication becomes less and less effective. There are a number of other pharmacological treatments available that doctors may prescribe depending on the patient. These include L-DOPA infusions, dopamine agonists, MAO-B inhibitors, COMT inhibitors, anticholinergics, and amantadine. Norians is another medication that is interesting because it is very new. This is an add-on medication to L-DOPA and works to treat symptoms during off episodes when L-DOPA is less effective. In addition to pharmacological treatments, there are a number of non-pharmacological treatments for PD as well. Some of the more common of these treatments include deep brain stimulation and repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation. Others include neurotrophic factors therapy, near-infrared light therapy, gene therapy, cell replacement therapy, and environmental enrichment. There are also a number of more traditional non-pharmacological treatments that have been shown to be effective for patients with PD. These include physio-exercises therapy, specifically focusing on strength and flexibility, as well as Tai Chi, Qigong, mindfulness, meditation, relaxation training, yoga, dance and music therapy, acupuncture, massage, and healthy eating. Traditional and herbal medicines, as well as life habits and nutritional supplements, can make a difference for these patients as well. It is important to keep in mind that treatments are all about finding what is right for the particular patient. Treatment plans are very dependent on the individual and their physician's discretion. Here I have a short video highlighting one particular patient's experience with Parkinson's disease.
We met in 1976 at Duke University, actually off campus at a United Methodist Church covered dinner.
I don't remember much about when I actually met him, though. I met him across the potato salad, I guess. I just remember him as being, I guess, intellectual, but just very friendly and very warm.
We were blessed to have 3 wonderful children, all adults, and now 4 grandchildren. We added a 4th just 2 months ago. Those grandchildren, I just love to sit and watch them. It's fascinating. Life before Parkinson's is quite frankly hard to remember at this point. It's been quite a while. Parkinson's slowed me down, literally. We started to notice subtle changes. Ellen would say, "John, you're not swinging your right arm when you walk." She'd also ask me to repeat myself a lot. I was very concerned she was losing her hearing.
Right. He told me I just wasn't listening, or maybe I was going deaf. Yeah.
But I found out that's very common for Parkinson's pairs.
One thing that John noticed, and this is what caused him to go to our family doctor, was that he was having pain in his right shoulder. So then he sent us to the neurologist, and it was interesting. The neurologist said, "Has your writing gotten smaller?" And yes, and he said, is your family having more trouble hearing you?" And we just started to laugh. So he was on to that sort of the typical signs of early Parkinson's.
First thing when I got the diagnosis, I was afraid. I wasn't familiar with the disease. Since then, I've learned that it's nothing to be afraid of. It's not a death sentence. Quite to the contrary, I think there's a lot of reason that we can have strength for the day and hope for tomorrow. So 14 years later, I continue to have Parkinson's, but I like to say I have Parkinson's, but Parkinson's doesn't have me.
He's very self-disciplined, very organized, very logical, and I tell people that he's my hero. He's my hero every morning. He does his exercises and he does his reading, and he's just that personality trait has just served him well, and I appreciate it.
You want to guess who my hero is?
There are some resources available in the Wolfville area for individuals with PD and their families. The Super Walk takes place annually, usually over Labor Day weekend. The Super Walk is put on by Parkinson Canada and is the largest fundraising event for this foundation. The purpose of the Super Walk is to raise both funds and awareness for PD, and Wolfville is one of the Super Walk locations. There are also a number of support groups available for PD patients as well as their families in the Wolfville and New Manus areas. There are resources available in the Halifax area as well. The Head Atlantic office for Parkinson Canada is located in Halifax. There are a number of support groups available here as well. Thank you for watching.